He is a graduate in computer science from UIA and holds an MBA in international business. He is a recognized leader in Latin America by his impact on the digital transformation process and has been selected as one of the top 100 influencers in EdTech worldwide by the EdTech Digest magazine. His direct social media impact is highly targeted at educational leaders and is measured at more than 35,000 people. He has held several executive global positions during his 30-year career, such as Consulting and Services Director at Hewlett-Packard Latin America. Ladies and gentlemen, Fernando Valenzuela.
I just wanted to be seated for a while, so apologies for that. So I want to thank Discovery Education for making this trip possible for me. This is my third time in Tesol, so I don't know why they keep inviting me back, but I guess I need to prove for the fourth time. So I want to thank Discovery for doing this effort together with Tesol for this time, and I also want to thank the team from Universidad Savannah. I know that there's a guy by the name of Jose who's doing all of these wonderful videos, so I think Jose deserves an applause. Jose, where are you? I don't know Jose, but Jose is world famous now. And I did my best to make it to the top in the WUBA, and I could only make it to fourth place. And that has been a challenge. There's a couple of teachers somewhere that are just crazy with the app. So I'll get you sometime. So I decided to call this conference with a name that cannot be pronounced, not read, because I couldn't figure out exactly how to describe what we need to do and the times that we are living today. So I want to start by sharing some of the reflections on my own, privileged and unique career over the past few years. Few years means more than 30. When you say few years, that long time it's over 30. Few years is below 30. Okay. So over the past few years, I had a number of experiences around education that I want to share with you as a reflection. And the first thing that I want to do as a reflection is to say, why is it that we learn differently than we are living? And how do we match our learning with the times that we are facing? So in order for us to begin this reflection, we need to think, first of all, about the type of learners that we are facing today. And we are facing these learners that are able to do things today that we couldn't imagine. We are facing learners that are driving the agenda for the adults, for governments, for institutions, for schools. These are students that realize that they have a voice, they have an influence, they can have millions of followers, they can impact the lives of their own generation, above the generation, and below the generation. And this happens for the first time in our history. So we are facing a world that is highly confusing. We are having machines writing novels, doing art, and we are having humans becoming robots. So we need to place ourselves in a very, very unique space in the history of humanity. This has never happened before. But the one thing that I believe is the number one priority for us in education is that you cannot get any significant learning without establishing a significant relationship. And that is our future. If we are not able to build relationships, then we have no job as a teacher, as an educator, nothing to do. And you can see that all around the world. I'm gonna share a couple of reflections on this topic as well, because I'm seeing news that say, forget about classes, forget about textbooks, learn from people, learn from each other, learn about different perspectives. And with this message, I like to connect with the talk yesterday about storytelling, the talk this morning about the times that we're living and how to humanize technology. We need to keep these two conferences from this event together in order for me to kind of build on top of that. And the other word that I learned only about 2 months ago when I was in Jerusalem, I was understanding how the ecosystem in Israel is really changing by connecting government with scientific institutions, with entrepreneurs, with technology, and with capital. And they came back with this word, firgun. And firgun only means that you are going to share what you know. You are going to establish a relationship by contributing to someone else without expecting anything in return. And those to me are two of the bases of establishing relationships, learning from people, and building on top of what diverse perspectives bring you into learning. So what I have done for the past 15 years is exactly that. I have been trying to learn from everybody that is connected, interested in education. There is a prize if you name 5 people that is not me 5 times, okay? But so you can see in this picture politicians, sportsmen, entertainers, journalists, economists, CEOs, parents, and everybody is realizing that they need to get into education. And what happens is that we, the teachers, do not realize that we're already in education and we need to make a change. And because of this work, I was selected last year as one of the top 100 influencers in the education technology world. We established a group that we meet virtually a couple of times a year. We see each other at the events. We try to share knowledge, best practices. We try to see what is going on in the world. But you're going to recognize a lot of these faces and some of these people that are really changing education. And I was able to barely make it. They were printing already at the end, and I was, able to get my head in that report. So my view, and I think the difference is that there's 3 forces very difficult to get in balance. You need to remain as an academic. You need to have the right pedagogy. You need to incorporate and use technology, and you need to do this on a smart business financial viability. And these 3 forces are always in conflict. So people that are good in pedagogy, they do not understand technology. People that are good in technology, when they try to get into pedagogy, they get burned. And neither one of those knows how to justify this on a financial term, on a budgeting, on a marketing, on return on capital, investments, and all of that. And that has been my point throughout the past 10 years. Trying to get these 3 forces in balance. You cannot use technology unless it helps you with your pedagogy. But you cannot do either one of those unless you figure out what capital is needed, what investment is needed, how to return the investment, how to measure impact, how to measure return, everything on that. So we are living, I don't know if anybody heard a few years ago the term VUCA. Have you heard VUCA? These past 10 years were classified as VUCA, vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous time. VUCA. Look at that. That happened about 8 or 10 years ago. Vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So how do you teach for ambiguity? When you have to put a note, you get an A, a B, or a C. That's not ambiguous. How do you teach for uncertainty when you always know what's right and what's wrong? How do you teach for complexity How do you teach for vulnerability? So that happened, and now they realize that we're entering an even worse era for the next decade, and that is how it's being classified. Unprecedented transformation and radical uncertainties. So it's not only VUCA, but it's radical. It's radical because the technology is just starting. You have the population and the smartphones almost covering everybody. It's just a matter of 2 or 3 years before everybody has a smartphone. And just as you see what is changing, you can see the disruption in business, politics, economy, education, social models. You can see shifts in work. You can see personal devices. You can see the impact on information, the impact on the user experience, everything happening at the same time. And that's why all these people began to say, what are we going to do? What is going to happen with this world? How do we educate if we are still following the rules, not even of VUCA, but the rules of the 19th century in education? So we are facing kids that are going to live for 100 years, that are going to work in 20-something different jobs, that they're going to face developments that have never happened before, and we're not ready for that. And we're not teaching for that. We are teaching grammar, math, biology, separate subjects on a very structured time, which has nothing to do with VUCA, with URTU, with disruption, with the changes. We cannot continue to teach in the 19th century and expect our kids to live in the 21st century and to succeed. And success is going to be totally different. You can see this everywhere. This is not something that I'm projecting. This is not an, fiction. This is happening today. These are the questions that the world is asking. Why? Because for the first time in the history of humanity, computers surpassed our imagination. A few years ago, you could say that there were major gaps in people. You either knew how to read and write, or you didn't. That was a major gap. You either knew English or a second language or not, another major gap. And you either know how to relate with technology or not, 3 major gaps. Today, you have a gap in blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, quantum computing, 5G, telecommunications. So the gaps are bigger for more people than just the 3 major gaps that we had. And this is only the beginning. This all started in 2007 when the smartphone began to do it. In the meantime, in education, we say everything needs to be structured. We need to have a curriculum that is based on age, and we need to move from first year to second year to third year, because in the world, everything is structured. Because we cannot lose the structure, because we need to learn everything at the same time. We all need to have the same standard tests. We need to have the same lessons. We need to have the world in order. No, the world is not in order. So when you see it like this, it's like we're teaching our kids how to live in the same block, with the same house, in the same car, forever. And we are highly, highly concerned about access to education. Everybody needs to get in class, everybody needs to go there, everybody needs to go to the university. But if we were architects instead of educators, we probably would realize what we're doing. And this is my example. This is what we're doing. We're trying to get everybody in class. Doesn't matter if that was the right class or not. And we're building human beings that are not able to stand in the 21st century. And that is a huge reflection and a call to action for teachers. Because we should all be feeling our students comparing us with how they live. And they are saying, you know, education is probably not that engaging, is it? We are probably getting bored. But we as adults, as teachers, we say, these kids, you know, we really need to take their smartphones off class. You know, these guys are really distracted. They are only concerned about Spotify, Netflix, Instagram. They are very, very distracted. No. They are very, very engaged in different ways. And we're not ready to engage them, even though we have education as a weapon. They are saying, why is it that we still need to learn in the same spaces with the teacher in front of us, in class? You still get these students to say, you know, can I have the guide for the exam, please? Would you tell me if this is in the program or not? Would you please let me know how to study for this test? These are not questions for VUCA, URTRU, disruption, and what's coming. And we need to really think through that. And then we come with these different strategies to say, okay, we need to have these millennials. We need something to avoid millennials from distracting. These millennials are not willing to do the minimum effort. They are not willing to engage. They are going to have different tools. So somebody invented machines to protect from millennials and say, you will never steal my car because this requires manual capabilities. This is exactly what we're doing in education. We are telling them, we're going to put you with some manual capabilities so you can engage. The other thing is that we all say we need collaboration. We need to have them work in teams. We need to have standard groups. And the world is going in an opposite way. Things like, I'm going to teach you how to collaborate with people that you don't trust, because that's what you're going to face in the world. I had an opportunity when I was president of Cengage a few years ago to develop this product that was called Opposing Viewpoints. You cannot teach what's right and what's wrong anymore, because you're getting changes in society that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, our parents taught us things like, you know, there would never be marriage among same-sex couples. There would never be, you know, marijuana legalized. There would never be, and now there is. How do you deal with that? What is the truth? What is right? What is not right? How do we impose something when you have these kids to say, you know, you adults are not really understanding? So we need to change the lessons. You cannot change technology unless you change your lessons. Unless you realize that the kids today are capable to do things that just a few years ago needed millions of dollars, needed a company, needed a government, and today a group of 3 kids can do something amazing. 1 kid can do something amazing. This is the week 39 of the climate change school strike. Became a world movement headed by a girl who's most likely going to be the second teenager to win the Nobel Prize by doing something radical stopping the world and saying, you adults don't understand. You adults don't understand. And that's why I bought a Vespa to become a millennial, a late millennial, try to get this, what is going on in this world. I'm trying to work in co-working spaces. I'm trying to speak with kids every time I can to understand how this is going to be. And at the same time, I'm looking at technology. And I say, how does a computer learn? How do you build artificial intelligence? Well, first, you get some information into the computer. You teach the computer a few tasks. And then you keep learning with more data and more tasks. And this is Amazon Alexa, which was able to do 5,000 tasks in 16, in 18, 30,000 tasks. You know how long it's going to be before they do 3 million tasks? Probably a few months. The computer just changed. And the computer is learning every single day. It's learning the difference between handwriting. It's learning how to identify things like that are probably similar. Computers are learning this every single day. In the meantime, we come to education and we say, all right, everything needs to be in order. We need to learn first grade, second grade, third grade, because life, really, you guys have it all wrong. Life is really a ladder. Everything is by step. Please don't get ahead of the group. We're going to get together as a factory. We're going to build millions of human beings exactly with the same recipe. Because you're going to be studying basic education, then you're going to go to the university, then you're ready. You're ready for the world, and the world is going to be a ladder. No. This is not how it's going to be. It's going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different. You're going to have panic. You will not retire. You're going to have to find a job at 70. You're going to have to learn again at 50. You're going to have to go back and develop new skills. And this is not science fiction. This is already happening. This is already happening. These are all the skills that are in danger. This is how talent cannot be found. This is some of the things that the world is thinking. How do we become more human in the right of technology? What is going to happen with the world? How many jobs are going to change, disappear, modify? How many people are going to need reskilling when they're 50 to reinvent themselves? And then you have millions of dollars for the first time in history, people like YouTube saying, okay, I'm going to invest millions of dollars to build educational videos for the world. So how do we teach for these kids? How do we make it engaging? How do we make it so we can really tell them something? How do we make them live in a world where they're going to be famous for 15 minutes? How do you deal with, in our times, to be famous, you needed to be an actor, a political figure, a soccer player, a painter. Today, these kids, they do something stupid and they become famous with millions of people knowing what happened. And they are trying to learn different ways. They are going to find different engaging capabilities. They are going to find in their common lives, they're going to live in a mixture between real life and virtual. And the next step, today, we're just starting. The next step is months away. You're going to have these computers react to the environment. Today, they can only do this passively. In a few months, computers are going to be proactive. They're going to say, hey, you're doing something different today. Hey, you haven't eaten correctly. Hey, computers are going to take the lead in our lives. And the only way we can deal with that is to rebalance humanity, is to figure out what are the human capabilities that we need to build. And I decided to show you an example of a human capability. How do you teach coherence? How do you teach coherence? How do you make sure that what you say and what you do always match? Because coherence is totally different than consistency, which is the best way to pass the exams, the assessments, the tests. You can be consistently incoherent, right? So, if you don't do what you say coherent, you see, you have this example. This is not in English, this is in French, but we can all understand. What's wrong with this picture? I'll give you a while while you look for Google Translator. What is wrong with this picture? We need to teach humanity. And for us as teachers, institutions, we need to change. We are obsolete. Our views are the views of an old institution. No matter if you're teaching and you are 25 years old or 65. What happens is, in order for you to grow and to change, you need to lose some things that you achieved by being mature, and that is the control. So an organization and a person is not old or young because of their age. It's old if they value the control over the flexibility. A kid who is 4 or 5 years old is totally flexible, totally out of control, so they need supervision. So we cannot be as flexible as we wanted because we would lose everything. That could be dangerous. But what is the right level of control? So we're already, as educators, aging. We need to go back. We need more flexibility. We need to become adolescents again. We have become old and obsolete because we treasure, value, we design, we operate, we test, we teach with control. And we are not comfortable losing control in our classes. Unless we are comfortable losing control, we're also losing the battle. And you see other areas, for example, games, video games, you see how they're growing. You see how many people are engaged in this type of apps. You see how companies are changing, reinventing, disappearing, growing. You see, only in 2010, there were a few companies that we could relate with. 2018, totally changed. Companies that are the size of countries, that have the influence of the world. And then you have different companies where our students want to work in. They want to work in an app. Because everything today is being solved by an app. These are the companies that our kids are going to be working at in many, many different apps. And then you see the amount of money that is being thrown to win the engagement of kids. That is the only play that matters. Win the engagement. What is the game that we're losing in education? we're losing the engagement. Because how they're playing, these are the companies that they want to work with. These are the companies where they spend more time at. This is how they feel when they want to learn, figure out something, collaborate, find friends. This is what's happening. And this is only the beginning. The amount of time that they are connected, the amount of time that they are using these apps is just increasing. This is only beginning. So when I say to some of the kids in Latin America, say, you're gonna work for a Chinese company. No. Our country does not have a trade relationship with China. Actually, very few Chinese here in Latin America. Well, wrong. You're most likely going to work with a Chinese company because Chinese companies are the ones that are buying the entertainment apps that the kids are being engaged with. So our kids are going to most likely work for a Chinese company. They're coming, already there. There's also another side. There's the dark side of all of this. The internet finally begins to realize we probably did too much. So we are now moving back the pendulum from getting a lot of likes, a lot of followers, a lot of influence, to become more human. Even the people that built social media are saying we screwed up. Sorry for the French. They are saying we did something wrong. Because getting likes is not solving the problems. Getting likes is not what matters. The whole industry is realizing that we need to become human. Just last week, Facebook announced a new version of Instagram, a new version of Facebook, a new version of WhatsApp that is going to protect the users from bullying, from fake news, from attacks. Last week, they're saying we're going to focus in groups, we're going to focus in communities rather than likes. We're going to focus in valued conversations. Also last week, Google announced that they are going to change and protect their users. So the whole internet industry is saying, uh-oh, this has been out of control. We need to get back. Twitter said, I'm going to stop anything that can produce violence, hatred, anything. And the whole business community is beginning a change. It's beginning to change for impact. It's beginning to change for conscious capitalism. Everybody in the business world is going to change. Starbucks, Disney, Walmart are saying we're going to move into education, we're going to provide education as a benefit, we're going to help our employees engage, we're going to give them tools for the rest of their lives. They're going to say we're going to begin valuing the justice index rather than profits. This is happening. This is not science fiction. So our kids are moving back, and we as educators are still in the same place. We went from VUCA to Urdu. Nothing is going to change. We are still doing standard classes, standard tests for standard kids, because we're all going to live in the same house. The same technology can be good or bad. You can use technology to cure, to engage, to educate, or to hurt. How do you teach that lesson? So for the first time, you're having the Nobel Prize for Teachers. Varkey Foundation gave $1 million just a few months ago to this African teacher who's trying to figure out how to engage African rural students in the 21st century. $1 million for one teacher. and he actually donated the $1 million for his kids. This is happening. We need to figure out the engagement formula. We need to work towards that. We need to figure out the boundaries between reality and technology. What's virtual, what's real, who is who? Who is the virtual guy? Because the boundaries between digital and physical are disappearing. You need to change your role from teaching to curating, creating experiences, building imagination, building exposure to the world, thinking, solving problems, engaging. And there's a lot of things happening creatively. For example, how do you deal with Black population being displaced? We're going to try to win recognition for Black people. And what they did was they used art, a different type of art, a very human capability. This is something that a computer would never be able to do. They painted real people's portraits, and then the real people began to dance, and they were appreciating communities. How are the classes being changed? New design, new engagement, new roles. This is not imagination. This is happening today in a small town in Morelia, Mexico. This is not imagination. The other major pendulum change has to do with the role of women. We are finally getting to the place where in my career, I have had about 14 bosses, one female. I bet our students are going to have 60 to 70% of their bosses being female. I did a workshop last week with 350 kids, and I told the girls, please, if the guy next to you doesn't call you a jefa, you have a problem. And the girls were, yeah, I'm the jefa, yeah. This is going to happen. I urge you to download or watch from YouTube this Pixar documentary, 10-minute long, called Gender. Look it up and see how the world of work has to adapt for the change of the female bosses coming over and not needing to become masculine to win a place. This is already happening. This is already happening in many different fronts. You're going to find more and more bosses in the world. But also, you're going to find these type of people. Robots that do not get tired, work 24/7, speak 45 languages. They always double check the information that they have. They never ask for a raise. And you can hardly recognize that this is not a person, it's a machine. And this is happening today. She's delivering news 24/7. Today. So I asked the same group of kids, 350, I said, what is the largest live concert that you can attend? And they said, 10 million people. I said, come on, where do you get 10 million people? I mean, you get any stadium, you get 100,000, not 10 million. No, you don't understand. 2 months ago, I attended the largest live concert and I interacted with millions of kids my age. This was the concert happening in a gaming platform with a real live musician using the platform to do a concert for millions of kids. And then the same day, I had an auditorium like this with all of the parents of the same 350 kids that I was talking to. And I asked them, did you know that your kids attended the largest concert ever in the world? Nobody knew. Nobody knew. And then you ask the kids, well, what is it that is so good about this concert? Everybody can go. We're all the same. You don't need to wait in line. In the meantime, we are still teaching. You're going to be an accountant. I'm going to teach you accountant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then, okay, you're going to be probably an accountant, but you need a little bit of biology and a little bit. And now the world is saying, what human capabilities you want to develop so you can coexist with technology? What is the right curriculum so you focus on the human capabilities in the curriculum? Because you will never be in a place where you learn and then do. You do, you learn, you do. How do you build education for networking? Because the world is realizing that all of the new changes in the world are coming from people that used to work together in a network that was very efficient. And the only difference between these networks today and the networks in the future is that more than half are going to be female, which is not happening in these networks. And the headhunters that are looking for talent are asking for major things. What are the skills and behaviors that you have? What experiences have you developed? What are your aptitudes, inclinations? And what are your values and interests? They are not saying, you know, what's the name of the university that gave you the certificate? They are starting not to care about diplomas, certificates, or anything. So I have a very large LinkedIn network, and I did an effort to identify all of my friends, all of my connections that had interesting jobs that you could not get in the university. Look at some of these. You have the head of futures, the chief digital evangelist, the chief of myself. I want that. No, I actually want another one. I want the chief troublemaker. This is not an invention. These are real jobs, real people in real companies today. And you can see all of them are first level connections with me. So I know these people. These already exist. So we need to figure out what are the paths to the future. We need to figure out. In Israel, you already have these stop signs that are in the floor, not in the ceiling. You already have those. Because they know that people have to work like this. Did you know who's building the largest airport in the world today? Singapore? No. Who? Who is building the largest airport? I'll give you a clue. Search for the news today. The largest airport is going to be owned by Amazon, who's going to deliver a fleet of drones to send your products home. This is not science fiction. Read the news. The largest airport from Amazon. And this is only the beginning. You're going to have 5G telecommunication powers in a few months. You're going to have quantum computing next year. You're going to have all the technology so computers can make decisions. You're going to get into the microsecond economy. So what is it that we need to do? We need to build this type of education. We need to be a little bit of academic, a little bit concert, a little bit art, a little bit messy, and a little bit technology. This is happening today. This is how education is going to be looked tomorrow. These are the classes of the future. a couple of months ago, I interviewed a teacher from Michigan, 67 years old, and she teaches a class for 2.4 million students in Coursera. And the class is called Learning to Learn. 2.4 million students, and this is not a millennial, 65 years old or 63 years old. So we need teachers who dare. We need teachers who dare to change. And the way I have done this for the past 10 years is I said, disruption will not come from within education. It's going to come from entrepreneurship. It's going to come because disruption did not come to taxis from their own taxis. It came from Uber. Disruption to education is going to come from outside. So I decided to do impact investment. I decided to go into smart money into education. I decided to win competitions for entrepreneurs in the world. So I'm part of the jury of the global competition for startups in EdTech, because the investment in EdTech is coming up. And it just started. It's growing like crazy. Smart money is coming to education. This is the lady, 2.4 million students in Coursera. And these are the startups, 15,000 companies developing technology in different areas. I know, I want to go too. I'm sorry. So these are 15,000 companies that we were able to map 2 years ago in the first census of EdTech. I did this for Mexico 3 months ago. These are the companies that are going to disrupt. And I do this every single day of my life. I talk to people that are trying to change education. I go to countries, speak to schools, consult, develop programs, try to figure out what is going to change. I look for best practices. I understand what the real teachers are doing. And I have an ecosystem of different companies in different areas, business, technology, pedagogy, so I can remain current, updated, and I can deliver this message to schools and educators. So I hope I was able to give you some reflection, and the only thing that I can tell you is we are still learning. Thank you.